Good evening to you, and this is the national news broadcast on Channel I, and we are ready to bring you the top stories from home and around the world. I'm Matara.
A very good evening indeed. I'm Charity Vinipularachi, and let's move on to the headlines for tonight's news.
United Nations assures its support in procuring the COVID-19 vaccine to Sri Lanka. Arrival of passengers from Britain to Sri Lanka has been temporarily suspended. Second phase of the Viru Abhiman COVID-19 insurance coverage begins. Colombo National Hospital receives PCR testing facilities. Agriculture Minister emphasizes that the vegetable trading mafia carried out by intermediaries will be stopped. Agri-harvest will be directly provided to traders. Opportunity for foreign tourists to arrive into the country from December 26th to January 19th. The need relieves for international airlines.
On to those and other stories in detail now, and starting off with local stories. United Nations issues support to Sri Lanka for the procurement, distribution and administration of COVID-19 vaccine. UN resident coordinator in Sri Lanka, Hana Singh, confirmed the support of the UN for the procuring, distributing and administrating process, and the Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa. The pledge was made today during a meeting between Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa and a UN delegation. The UN delegation was comprised of UN resident coordinator Hana Singh, WHO representative Dr. Rezia Penze and UNICEF representative Tim Sutton. UN resident coordinator Hana Singh said the United Nations is fully committed to support Sri Lanka in these challenging times. The UN delegation and Sri Lankan officials agreed that vaccination at such a mass scale will require a whole-of-government approach to ensure Sri Lanka's preparedness for the delivery administration of vaccine once it arrives. Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa said that many countries are experiencing a second wave of COVID-19 vaccines will be the only measure that can bring an end to this pandemic. In this April year, a globally collaboration called Access to COVID-19 Tools Accelerator was established to accelerate the development, production and equitable access to COVID-19 diagnostics, therapeutics and vaccines. Under this program, the COVAX facility will offer vaccine doses at least 20% of an eligible country's population, which will initially consist of high-risk groups. UNICEF representative Tim Sutton stressed during the meeting that UNICEF is already assisting the procurement during an initial phase, and the agency can assist the government with vaccine procurement beyond the initial 20%. Dr. Penze briefed the meeting on the global vaccine landscape and stressed that even with a vaccine, people will still need to take precautions. One of the key messages that emerged from the meeting from all officials is that people cannot become complacent even after receiving the vaccine. While studies have been ongoing, doctors have indicated that it is still not certain how long the vaccine's protection will last. Furthermore, according to doctors, it is also uncertain whether the vaccine completely removes the virus or just reduces the viral load. The UN envoy said that even with the vaccination, the public is still strongly encouraged to continue wearing a mask, washing hands and maintaining adequate physical distance. Minister Pavitra Vanyarachi, State Ministers Ajit Nivad Cabral, Sudarshani Fernandipule and Secretary to the Prime Minister Gamini Senarath were also present at this occasion.
President Gotabaya Rajapaksa today decided to suspend arrival of passengers from the United Kingdom with effect from today due to a new strain of COVID-19 currently spreading across UK. The decision was taken at the daily meeting of COVID-19 Prevention Committee held at the Presidential Secretariat. Passengers arriving in the island from the UK today will be accommodated at hotels after conducting PCR tests and will be quarantined for 14 days under the supervision of the health officials. They will be further subjected to 14 more days of home quarantine. The crew members of cargo flights inbound from London are also subjected to quarantine. President drew the attention of the COVID committee to the need to expedite the introduction of the COVID vaccine to Sri Lanka. COVID vaccines have been developed by a number of countries led by US, UK and China. The principal advisor to the President, Lalit Veeratunga, was authorized to coordinate necessary action in consultation with the relevant countries and local health authorities after an in-depth study of the vaccine. The groups to be vaccinated will be determined based on the need and priority. It was also decided to collect data on high-risk areas including estates, flats and hostels and groups. Minister of Health Pavitravani Arachi, State Minister Sudarshini Fernandopulle, Member of Parliament Madhura Vithana, Secretary to the President P.B. Jayasundara, Principal Advisor to the President Lalit Veeratunga, officials of the airport and aviation and members of the COVID Prevention Committee were also present. Meanwhile, initiating the second phase of the Viru Abhiman COVID-19 insurance coverage, a certificate of the insurance policy was presented to President Gotabaya Rajapaksa today. It was presented to the President by Chairman of the Sri Lanka Insurance, Dr. Jagat Vellavatta, at the Presidential Secretariat. With the COVID-19 outbreak in the country, Sri Lanka Insurance initiated the first phase of this insurance policy in the month of April. Doctors and others related to healthcare services, triforces, police and officers in the state sector who are at the forefront in the battle against COVID-19 will be covered through this insurance policy. Under the second phase, all employees in both state and private sector will be involved in this policy. Under the policy, an amount up to 100,000 rupees will be provided at the unfortunate event of employees' loss of life due to COVID-19. An amount up to 1,000 rupees will be provided for hospitalization. 2,000 rupees will be provided for the treatments received in intensive care unit up to a maximum of 90 days. Ministers Pavitravani Arachi and Janaka Bandara Thenakone were present at this occasion.
And here's the local update of the COVID-19 pandemic. Epidemiology unit says the number of COVID-19 recoveries in the country has increased up to 29,300. Another 618 COVID-19 recoveries were reported in the country today. 75 fully recovered COVID-19 patients who were receiving treatments at the COVID-19 treatment centres in Polonnaruwa district were discharged today. They have been identified as residents of Colombo, Gampaha, Hambantota, Kalutara and Kandy districts. A total of 12,310 COVID-19 recoveries have been reported in the country since the beginning of this month until today. The highest number of COVID-19 recoveries recorded in a day was reported on December 16th. Accordingly, 785 recoveries were reported on that day. Meanwhile, a total of 618 COVID-19 recoveries were reported in the country today. The percentage of fully recovered COVID-19 patients in the country is at 77.33, taking the tally to 29,300. This percentage of active patients currently receiving treatments is at 22.19, with the tally at 8,410. The National Operations Centre for the Prevention of COVID-19 Outbreak has said that all COVID-19 patients detected from the Minawangudagavan factory COVID cluster have fully recovered from the disease at present. The first COVID-19 patient of the cluster was identified on October 4th. Accordingly, the patient was a 39-year-old resident from Bombugammana area. A total of 3,059 COVID-19 patients were detected after conducting PCR tests of the employees of the garment factory where she was employed and her close contacts. Accordingly, all the patients from the cluster have recovered and the final batch of patients left the hospital yesterday following their recovery. Meanwhile, another 260 corona patients were identified in the island today. Out of this total, 225 have been identified as close associates of the patients in the Pallekele cluster. The remaining 35 patients have been identified as those connected to the prison cluster. Defence Secretary retired Major General Kamal Gunaratne said that if the public strictly adhere to health instructions, the eradication of COVID-19 outbreak in the country would not be a difficult task. Meanwhile, 5 COVID-19 related deaths were reported in the country today. The deceased patients have been identified as residents from Colombo 15, Darga Town, Maguna and Colombo 10 areas. Also, an inmate of the Pallekele prison has also died from the disease. The 5 deceased patients were at the ages of 55, 63, 68, 77 and 83 respectively. Meanwhile, 9 COVID-19 patients have been detected from the office of the medical health officer in Paduka. The patients were reported from a garment factory in the area of Paduka Hospital and Divisional Secretariat. Accordingly, the garment factory has been temporarily closed down while the hospital and the Divisional Secretariat have been disinfected. 13,860 PCR tests were conducted yesterday. The total number of PCR tests conducted so far is at 1.145 million. A 5 million rupees worth PCR machine was donated to Colombo National Hospital today. The donation was made in accordance to a request made by the Sri Lanka College of Cardiology. The donation has been made by Hema's group of companies. Accordingly, PCR testing will be carried out in the Colombo National Hospital. The hospital director mentioned that the PCR testing of the patients is at pending list for daily surges will be expected with this machine. Minister Vavitravanyarachi received the PCR machine from chairman of the Hema's Hospital, Murtafa Izalfi, managing director of Hema's Jude Fernando, CEO Kasturi Wilson and COO Dinesh Atapattu at the ministry premises. Meanwhile, Sri Lanka Ports Authority has indicated that all operations at Colombo ports have been normalised.
Deputy Director General of Health Services Dr. Hemanta Herath says that a committee of experts is expected to submit recommendations on necessary actions to be taken to curtail a possible transmission of the new strain of COVID-19 virus detected in the United Kingdom into the country. He made these remarks at a media briefing held today.
There has been certain reports related to new strain of virus originating in UK and that part of the world, and the questions are being asked on the impact of this new strain on Sri Lanka. At the moment, these reports are being evaluated by the Ministry of Health, and there is a group of experts including virologists who will be evaluating these new developments, and they will make their recommendations to the Ministry of Health to decide on the future course of action. And we believe that depending on their recommendations, the Ministry of Health will decide whether to take any specific new action, or if we are going to take such actions, what will be the new course of action.
He also made remarks over the proposed allocation of freezer containers to keep the remains of Muslim COVID-19 victims until a decision is made over the burial concern.
There has been concerns about the installation of freezer container in Colombo and along the roadside, and some people are asking about the safety of this arrangement. And I would like to say that this arrangement has been done after evaluating the process, and we have been able to ensure that the methods that they have used will not in any way pose a risk to the public, because it is a fully sealed container, and theoretically there is no risk of getting the virus out of this container. And even if it happens during the transfer of bodies out of this container, even if there is the slightest risk, that will be diluted in the atmosphere, and also it is in the open air, and through the sunlight it will be destroyed, and therefore this arrangement is not going to pose any risk to the public.
A program for the farmers to directly distribute vegetable harvest to traders without the interference of intermediates was initiated at the Economic Centre in Nara Hempita today. The event was presided by Minister Mahinda Nandalutgamage. The minister said that this program, which was initiated as a pilot project at Nara Hempita Economic Centre, will be implemented in all economic centres in the country. The aim of this program is to provide the opportunity for the farmers, consumers and traders to engage in fair trading activities without the interference of intermediaries.
And meanwhile, the wholesale trading activities of the new money market in Pallekele was opened yesterday in accordance to a new schedule. Accordingly, the money market will be open from 4 a.m. till 4 p.m. According to the previous schedule, the new money market in Pallekele was open from 4 p.m. till 10 p.m. Steps have been taken to conduct the relevant trading activities according to the new schedule after considering the inconvenience occurred transporting goods to the market as per the previous schedule. The wholesale traders have said that both retail traders and consumers can conveniently purchase fresh vegetables and fruits in accordance to the new time schedule.
The government has decided to allow the foreign tourists to arrive into the country from the 26th of December to the 19th of January, adhering to health methodology. The Cabinet of Ministers has granted approval to provide many reliefs for international airlines during this period. The government has also decided to provide incentives for the remittance of migrant workers. Minister K.L. Rambukwella said that the migrant workforce can be mentioned as a special group which brings foreign exchange worth $7 billion to the country. The minister said that in order to provide benefits for the migrant workers, an incentive scheme has been introduced. Accordingly, the minister said that under the scheme, an incentive of ₹2 will be paid per $1 when such employees or their beneficiaries converts remittances of earnings into Sri Lankan rupees. The minister said that the relevant proposal tabled by the Minister of Finance was approved by the Cabinet of Ministers. The Cabinet of Ministers granted approval for the importation of sliced dry coconut for a period of 3 months as an attempt to encourage local coconut producers. The relevant proposal was tabled by Ministers Ramesh Pathirana and Vimal Veeravansha. The Cabinet of Ministers also granted approval to provide many reliefs for international airlines under the pilot program to allow foreign tourists to arrive into the country from 26 December to 19th of January. Minister Ramesh Pathirana said that Cabinet approval has been granted to waive the landing and parking fees from the international airlines which operate flights to Sri Lanka. He said that many families involved in the tourism industry have been severely affected due to the present situation. Accordingly, he said that the requirement has emerged to provide certain locations for tourism-related businesses while adhering to certain limitations. It was stated that the government has not taken a decision over the airlifting the remains of Muslims COVID-19 victims to Maldives for burial purposes. An explanation was also made at the media briefing on the decision taken by the government to abolish the Public Utilities Commission.
Prime Minister called on Chief Incumbent of Mirisavatia Venerable Veterinary Gnanathilaka to look into the well-being of the Thera. The Prime Minister briefed Venerable Veterinary Gnanathilaka on the measures undertaken by the government to uplift the public life amidst COVID-19 pandemic and the future actions of the government aimed at social and Buddha-Sasana affairs in the coming year. Minister and public representatives were present at this occasion.
6 youths have been taken into custody yesterday for riding motorcycles in a careless and unsafe manner in Bokundara, Piliyandala area. This raid was conducted by the Piliyandala police. The suspects were taken into custody after the police received a tip-off over a group of youth engaging in a careless and unsafe acts with their motorbicycles while riding them at high speed. 6 suspects who have been taken into custody were released on bail and cases will be filed against them in court subsequently. A female beggar has died due to lorry traffic accident in Rawathawatta, Moratuwa. The police declared that the deceased was a 55-year-old. The lorry driver has been taken into custody accordingly.
And meanwhile, the Sri Lanka Army unveiled the plan on the roadmap for the next 5 years today. Advisor to the President Lalit Veeratunga presided the ceremony which was held at the Army headquarters. The plan has titled the Sri Lanka Army Way Forward Strategy 2020-2025. The first draft of the plan were presented to the advisor to the President Lalit Veeratunga and Defence Secretary retired Major General Kamal Gunaratne by Sri Lanka Army Commander Lieutenant General Shavendra Silva. The strategy expected to be implemented based on 7 factors including national security, battle preparedness, training and education, modernization, professional planning, personal welfare, honorable retirement and nation building and promotion on reconciliation.
Journalists qualified for the SCDC Mass Media Scholarship Program for the year 2020 received their respective scholarships today. The event was presided by Minister K.L. Rambukwella. The Ministry of Mass Media organized this SCDC scholarship program annually with the aim to improve the professionalism of journalists. The scholarship awarding ceremony was held at the Ministry of Mass Media. Accordingly, 85 persons encompassing all media institutes in the country have been qualified for this scholarship program. The journalists between the age of 18 and 55 employed at a recognized media institute for a period of 3 years on full-time and part-time basis and hold a media identity card issued by the Government Information Department are eligible to apply for this scholarship. Independent journalists, provincial correspondents and web journalists are also eligible for this program. An amount worth 200,000 rupees will be provided for graduate and postgraduate courses. Scholarships up to a maximum of 100,000 rupees will be provided for a short-term and long-term certificate, diploma and higher diploma under the program. The scholarship holders will be able to undergo a course related to media field conducted by a recognized university or higher educational institution. Secretary to the Ministry of Mass Media Jagat P. Vijayveera and Director General of Government Information Nalaka Kaluwewa were also present at this ceremony. Meanwhile, a program to distribute school equipment for children of journalists was held at the Sri Lanka Foundation Institute in Colombo today. Minister Kelly Rambukwala presided the ceremony organised by the Sri Lanka Press Council and as the chief guest with 50 students received school equipment from the minister.
And meanwhile, steps have been taken to develop Matara International Airport as a hub for cargo import and export services. Minister Prasanna Ranatunga said the steps will be taken to further develop the airport as a foreign tourist destination. A special program was initiated to transform Matara International Airport into an active airport before the COVID-19 outbreak prevailed in the country. The government has directed its attention to re-initiate these programs following the reopening of the country for foreign tourists. Special attention has been directed on many ventures, including the expansion of foreign investment recruitments related to airport, involvement of cultivators in agricultural sector in the airport export process, and improvement of facilities for the requirement of importers. Steps have been taken to transform Sri Lanka into a mines-free country in the next 2 years. State Minister Indika Anuruddha said that more than 200 million rupees have been allocated from the budget in this regard. Also, more than 7,000 million rupees have been allocated for the relocation of displaced communities and to improve infrastructure facilities. The State Minister made these remarks while engaging in an observational tour at the state sites of humanitarian mines disposal program. He visited Muhammale area in Kilinochchi.
And on the weather update, the Meteorology Department says prevailing showery conditions expected to continue further over northern and eastern parts of the country. Heavy falls about 100 millimeters can be expected in some places in eastern and Uva provinces and in Polonnaruwa, Matale and Nuwara districts. Many low-lying areas and paddy fields have been inundated due to heavy rains prevailing in Polonnaruwa district for the last 4 days. Polonnaruwa District Disaster Management Unit has stated that spill gates in several small tanks in the area have been opened. Reports have indicated that the vehicular movement along the Colombo-Battikilo main road has been disrupted since Kotale area has been inundated. Diggala area situated along the road to historic Somawati sacred site in Polonnaruwa has been inundated up to 3 feet. Accordingly, 6 buildings at the Somawati sacred site have also been flooded. Meanwhile, the spill gates of the Parakrama Samudra will be opened in the rainy condition continues to prevail in the area.
And with that, we conclude tonight news. This is tomorrow at the very same time. Stay safe. Good night.
Good night.